Welcome back, everybody, here to League on Lock. My name is Eric, and it's Power Rankings hype after Week 6, and so far in the two LCS regions, Europe has kind of taken on the role of North America, where there's a clear couple of top teams, as we used to see TSM, Cloud9, throw in Immortals. They basically just steamrolled the competition in the regular season, but now it's the top three in EU that are looking extremely dominant, and the rest of, or in North America, it's anybody beats anybody in any given matchup, which, you know, can give some excitement, but overall makes the region look not quite as strong when you have 8th place, 9th place teams that can beat the top dogs. But in EU so far, that has not been the case. It was Misfits who got out to that incredible 9-0 start, but as of late, they've gone 1-2 over their last few games. And because of that, because Fnatic took them down, and because Fnatic had another dominant 2-0 week, we got changes in the top spot of our Week 6 Power Rankings. Fnatic overtakes Misfits to sit on top of the throne for the regular season Power Rankings in Week 6, which doesn't actually mean anything, but I'm going to call it a throne anyways. And aside from that, there wasn't a whole lot of movement across the standings. In fact, there was none. But let's talk a little bit more about Fnatic taking that top spot, because Misfits did drop a game to Splyce. Fnatic completely destroyed Schalke in what was coveted as the EU LCS Match of the Week, Year of the Duck. Well, he got completely clapped by Caps, who is looking like far and away the best Western player in the entire Western scene. That's how it would work. He's looked like the most dominant laner and has completely destroyed team fights. Can't wait to see him at international competition again, because in the two events he's played at this year, Rift Rivals and MSI, he showcased he can go with the best of the best, even though at Rift Rivals, he wasn't exactly against the best of the best with those North American mid laners. But at MSI, we saw what he was capable of doing. He is the front runner right now for MVP in Europe, and I don't think there's much of an argument you can make against that. G2 continues in that third spot, as we already said. Misfits down to number 2. They still are a team to be reckoned with. They're still going to have their work cut out for them if they want to qualify for Worlds, but Splyce played a pretty solid game against them, and G2 dropped a game to Schalke in pretty convincing fashion. Schalke, for once, was actually proactive and aggressive and took over that game and snowballed it pretty cleanly, and that's why they are still sitting in that 4 spot for us, finally starting to live up to at least a little bit of the hype. We've seen there's pretty much hype made up for this team every week. You come in, Year of the Duck, Week of the Duck, Day of the Duck, first 5 minutes of the game of the Duck, but finally they're actually looking pretty decent. Upset is looking a little more consistent. Vander was fantastic this weekend, as well as Vizicachi, the former Spring Split MVP. So Schalke's looking a whole lot better. They're in the top 4. And Splyce, we already talked about, they got the win against G2. They're staying in the top 5, even though they have a worse record than Vitality, who just had a pretty solid, not that solid actually. They really struggled against Giants, but they had a 2-0 week, so they're sitting at 7-5. But I think Splyce right now is still the stronger team, even though they lost to Vitality earlier in the split. They got the win against Misfits, not G2. Splyce got the win against Misfits, and that's why they're sitting 6-6 and still a spot ahead of Vitality. But those top 6 in EU, I think, with Roccat slowly knocking on the door, I still think they're a small tier below those top 6 squads. I think those are going to be your playoff teams going forward for the summer split, with Roccat maybe able to sneak in a spot from a Vitality or Splyce. But the clear top 6 right now in EU are how we have them on the Power Rankings, with Roccat right behind. And then the bottom 3, I mean, I suppose you can break them up into 2 tiers, just because H2K is far and away in their own league of not being good. They released that press release stating that they're all about competitive integrity. It sucks losing, but they're still going to throw a wrench in the standings. I thought they might get a win this week because the team sleeps on them. I still gotta believe that these guys are going to get at least 1 win. If you go 1-17, that's no fun. because you tie Coast for the worst record. 0-18 is obviously incredible. I feel bad for them to have that record. What they should be striving for is 2-16 so that you can go with the H2-16 because that's a great meme. People won't remember you as well. So strive for 2 wins, H2K, but right now they are in a tier of their own for not exactly looking like a competitive team in the EU LCS in general. Standout performers from week 6, you can pretty much say Caps any given week, but this week we got to go to a guy who returned to the EU LCS and yet again steals a starting position from Gilius. Kikis made his return for Vitality, led the squad to a 2-0 week, playing the Kindred and the Trundle. You remember way back when Unicorns of Love debuted in 2015, Gilius was their starting jungler, but it was Kikis who came in and eventually stole the starting spot when they came in to the LCS. So 3 years later, it's just the same thing, a role swap top for Kikis. He eventually comes back to the jungle spot. Gilius is out. The god Gilius, the Smite scrub of EU. Kikis is in, and maybe that's the piece that Vitality was missing because they were struggling the last couple of weeks. They did struggle a bit against Giants, but Kikis looked great on the Kindred. His ultimates were on point. He had a couple pickoffs that got them back into that game, securing a Baron. He looked great on the Trundle as well, and he was just very involved in the early game, was there for counter ganks, pretty much no wasted time. His ganks were clean across the board and almost always netted at least a summoner spell. He's excited to be back in the LCS. I'm excited to see him back in the LCS because for a guy who's been around the scene for so long, obviously we saw him in the European Masters this summer as well. He's only 22 years old. So for all the veteran leadership, this guy's an EU LCS champion. He's been to some finals. I think bringing that veteran leadership will really help out the Vitality boys because now they have that winning mentality and they can definitively have someone to tell Jizuki, you know, calm down, man. Too much laughing in game, too much yelling. But he was on the Galio a couple of games, by the way, he was criticized for not playing it last split when it was so meta. But boy, does he look comfortable on that champion now. Vitality looks like a team that will be something to be reckoned with come playoff time, and hopefully they can put up a better showing than they did last split. But right now they look much more comfortable with Kikis, and we'll see how they continue rolling going forward.